All right, let's go ahead and let's get going on this. So let me kick off by first saying I greatly appreciate everyone joining this live chat. As we're getting started, I'd like to cover the chat session disclaimer. This live chat in the Coding Talk series does not represent the opinions or strategies of Akzo Nobel International Paint. And additionally, I make every effort to provide accurate and up-to-date information from the global protective coatings and corrosion industries. Despite this care and attention, it is reasonably possible that the content and chat conversations within this live broadcast may have content that is incomplete and or inaccurate. Now, additionally to any recording, distributing, or any other use of this live chat is not permitted without written permission of Jim Kunkel, that's me. And I'm recording this session audio for rebroadcasting and to have an archive recording. So before I set up the topic for this live chat, I want to cover with you how you can participate in this chat. It's real easy. If you want to come up on the stage with Paul and I, all you need to do is hit the little function that says raise your hand. You raise your hand. That's telling me, hey, want to come up on stage? And Jim, will you open up my mic so I can ask a question or participate with something that happened at work that's related to the conversation, or maybe some additional information you want to provide to the live chat and to the guests regarding the topic. So the other things you can do as well, and some of you have already done it, is there's little reactions that you can do. You can wave, you can kind of give a heart. If you want to give some love to Paul and I, that's great. So please feel free to do some of those. And now let's get into this session's live chat topic, which is successful concrete flooring installations. And I am so very happy to have not only a fraternity brother, but a childhood friend for life, Mr. Paul Prevade, who's with Titan Floor Surface Technologies as a guest speaker tonight. Paul, welcome.
Jim, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. Can you do a favor? Can you set up your professional background and why you are a subject matter expert when it comes to this topic that we're going to cover this evening?
Absolutely. Currently, I'm with, as you said, Titan Floor Surface Technologies. I have been in the coatings industry for 17 years. I initially started out as a product specialist consultant with coating systems, not only for flooring, but also for corrosion issues and pumps and things of that sort, containment areas. I transitioned over to about 9 years ago, Titan Floor. We are a local contractor applicator in the Pittsburgh region. So we do residential, commercial, industrial applications with the floor coatings.
Very good, very good. And earlier today, you and I were talking about, not to disclose any owners or other contractors that might have caused it, but recently you've been actually doing a lot of work related to repairing or redoing a lot of failures regarding concrete flooring.
That's correct. Yeah, it seems to be, as of the last couple of years, there's been quite a few people coming into the industry, and as we'll discuss tonight, there's quite a bit to putting down a coating system. As simple as it may seem on the surface, to actually get it done correctly from start to finish does require, a lot of knowledge. Experience obviously is help, and a lot of skill. So, to get from point A to point B, there's quite a bit involved.
Yeah, and as everyone might know on the phone, and I know, Paul, you know firsthand that failure of concrete flooring systems are really usually due to a combination of factors rather than one single simple cause that led to an unacceptable installation. For example, construction on a less than quality, high quality concrete slab on grade, combined with, absence of a vapor retarder, or with residual concrete wear and other type of improper surface preparation, or really even to a poor coating selection applied and not at the ideal conditions. And it might be turned over into service too early. Well, that's going to be a combination and a recipe for disaster. Now, any of these issues can be a simple cause, but it's more typically a combination of some of the things I just mentioned that compounds together to produce a failure. So let's talk a little bit, Paul, about pre-project owner expectations. Related to communication when it comes across all phases of the project, that's critically important. And then additionally, it makes it easier to add in any unforeseen or unexpected situations or delays. When you're doing some of your commercial projects or you're doing your industrial projects, how critical is it for you as a flooring contractor to have communication, ongoing communication with an owner or the representation from the owner?
Oh, setting expectations is key. From the initial walkthrough up through the start of the project all the way through to the end, there's a lot of variables that you can run into that you just do not recognize on your initial visit or even a follow-up visit. So it is critical that you have a line of communication with everybody involved, whether you're working with a property owner or you're working with a contractor and you're a subcontractor. A lot of those things that you had previously mentioned, as far as some things you can run into as issues, can be corrected as you're going through the process. So as you start to prep a floor, you may discover something while you're prepping a floor that you initially didn't know with your first walkthrough. And it's important to keep that line of communication open, set the expectations, and let them know this is how the process goes. And we very well could run into some other variables.
Yeah, I think that communication is critically important. You might have certain customers that require a very rapid turnaround. I'm thinking in some of the restaurants, or if you've got other type of industries, even maybe like hotels or hospitals, or even if you're into something like a correctional institution, you might only have a very small, short period of time. Now, that obviously is going to be important to have a consideration when it comes to the prep. And then also to what coding system goes in, the application of it when it comes to the crews and everything like that. Now, with documentation, how important is documentation when it comes to, maybe not a residential, but more the commercial or the industrial? How important is it for an operation like yourself with working with your customers?
It's very important. I think you want to document everything that you come across, everything that you find when you're going through the process. And the good thing with today's technology, obviously, we have the ability to take pictures with our phone, take videos with our phone, communicate back and forth. If there is a situation that you run into, then you've got to make a decision along with the general contractor or the owner of the property to figure out how you want to proceed. So to document everything, to make sure, A, that you cover yourself, you're doing the prep, you got your prep covered, you show that that was something that was done. And then the coding system that you use, you take that all the way through to the end process. That covers you, but the other factor that can not sometimes come up is that you don't always see 100% certain everything that can go on with a concrete slab. There are issues that could arise 2 or 3 years down the road that no applicator or nobody could foresee. And if you cover yourself in terms of documenting everything that you do, then you can go back and show the history of how the application took place, what you did, and why, if you do have a failure, it's not a result of either the product or the process.
That's a very good point. Additionally, with the communication and documentation, where this also leads to is that if you have adequate communication with the owner or through representation of the owner, you have everything documented out. If you have any type of change orders that need to be done, those could be, in most cases, a little bit more easier signed off on, especially if there's a once you get into doing the prep and doing the assessment and the condition of it, there could be other things that are not 100% expected that could come out of that prep and getting ready to put on that new floor system. So that can impact the project as well. So let's go ahead and let's move into concrete condition, doing assessments. Now, you're going to either have a condition where you're going to either have a new freshly poured slab, and then you're going to want to do certain checks related to that, or you might have an existing slab that you're working with as well. When it comes to new concrete, what are some of the things that you're typically doing? I would imagine you're verifying the mix design, kind of checking it sometimes with the call outs. Does it meet maybe some of the ACI type of protocols and things like that? What are some of the things that you do for new concrete before you go in and do a new system?
Well, one of the things that you have to do for any type of coating system you put on is there's a waiting period after you pour a new concrete system. So you want to wait. Industry standard, they've come up with 28 days. So that gives the concrete the proper curing process to evaporate out any of the moistures and let it go through what it needs to go through to get it ready to put a coating system on. You do want to keep in touch with whomever's pouring the concrete to, again, get back to what you were saying, what type of mix it is, how is that system troweled down. One of the things that I always try to communicate is do not put a sealer on the concrete. In other words, whomever is pouring the concrete, do not put a sealer on it, because that's an extra process or more time consuming for the coating applicator to remove that sealer, to have the proper prep to put the coating system down. So there's those factors that are involved there. What type of pour is it? How are they troweling this pour? And then again, the sealer or lack of sealer are some factors that you have to look into.
Yeah. In addition to that, you're going to be, really kind of, like you said, 28 days, confirming that the concrete is properly consolidated, that it's pretty well set and suitable when it comes to a cure before the floor coating system is applied. The other thing is really checking the strength. Does it have adequate strength? Because in some situations you might have a floor that could be in a warehouse that has trucks, basically lift trucks moving around over top of it. Or, maybe you're in a precision type of warehouse like an Amazon where they have robotics running around, and that the floor has to be a certain type of consistency versus, let's say, something like maybe a rough type of surface that might be found in something that might be industrial and things like that. In addition to that, too, you're going to want to be checking for latents, dusting, from early carbonation. What finish does the surface have to it? Is the floor on grade or above grade? If it's on grade, is it intact? Vapor retarding, barrier below the entire slab. You're going to be checking for any type of cracks that happen, and then determining if those cracks are problematic as well. And then the other thing too, that I kind of wrote down here as a note that popped out for me, are there hot or cold areas of changing conditions? Sunlight through windows, door where freezing and thaw cycles happen. And then the other thing would be, is there any type of contamination? Maybe there's oils, or maybe you're in a processing plant, let's say for animals or something like that, where you might have certain types of oils or other types of solutions that might fall onto a pre-existing floor and things like that. For application conditions, when it comes to environmental conditions, especially related to humidity and changing temperatures, what are some of the things that you do related to environmental conditions, humidity, and changing temperatures? Are you just working off the product data sheet and trying to see where your window is, or how do you typically go about doing environmentals?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. It really depends on the coating that you're using. So, for example, if you're using an epoxy coating system, temperature is important. Typically, you need it to be above 50 degrees, not just your atmospheric temperature, but also the concrete slab itself. And then even in those conditions, you're talking about a very slow cure time. So it adds to, the amount of time that you can return the floor to service. If you're talking about a polyaspartic system, which we have a lot of experience with, you can actually install those down to 0 degrees. And so temperature is not a factor with a polyaspartic system. So depending on what you're using, what you're trying to accomplish, that's where temperature and humidity become a factor. But it's more geared towards the epoxy versus now with the technology in the polyaspartics, it's not that big of a factor.
What about related to you use a moisture meter? You do test moisture, the capillary, the moisture it might be moving in the slab. Do you test like that
Oh,
too,
I'm sorry, I
Paul?
lost you there for a second. You
Oh, that's
said you
okay.
said for the moisture with the moisture meter.
Moisture meter, do you use
We
those?
do. We do. So,
Okay.
and then we do the moisture meter test. We test it throughout different areas of the floor. We test it prior to the application. We also, when I say prior to, normally at a walkthrough. So if there's any indicators there that would throw up a red flag, and then obviously we got to talk about a moisture vapor barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And then we test it when we get to the job site and then while we're prepping also. But I would say that if you have any questions at all, if it's something where you're, as you said, if you're on grade, I highly recommend you go with a moisture vapor barrier.
Okay. Okay.
And because one of the reasons also is that we're testing at a specific time in a specific area under specific conditions for today's where we're at today. We don't know what's going to change in 2 or 3 or 5 years within that concrete slab itself.
Okay. Let's talk about now about application. And oh, by the way, if anyone listening does have any questions or would like to participate, don't forget to hit that raise your hand feature. We'll get you up on stage, open up your mic. Let's talk about with application methods. You know, some of the application methods that I'm used to for putting on floor coatings, there's going to be roller. There's going to be some that are going to be sprayed. It could be squeegee, gauge rake. You know, I was always wondering, is is it based on the system you're putting down? Is how you know, what methodology you use, or is there, you know, certain methodologies for application methods that are better than others? What, in your opinion, Paul?
So it really, so the system is important. You're putting, so let's go back to the epoxy. Epoxy typically goes down at a thicker rate versus a polyaspartic, which is a thinner system. So you can use a squeegee that's a notched squeegee that will gear that towards, let's say you need to put it down at 15 mils. So you're going to squeegee that at 15 mils. Whereas with a polyaspartic system, typically you can use what they call a magic trowel. It's basically a flat squeegee that goes down thinner. But in both cases, at least from our standpoint, we not only squeegee the system out, but we back roll it. So the reason we back roll that obviously is you're basically, when you back roll, you're pushing the system further into the concrete surface. You're getting a better look to the system. You're getting a better flow to the system. So it's a combination of the squeegee and also the roller system.
Okay, very good. And then related to equipment that you're using for floor prep and things like that, you know, I've gone to the World of Concrete and I see a lot of different type of equipment used for floor prep. You know, typically, what are some of the types of equipment that are being utilized to prep floors?
Most of what we do, we use the floor grinders. You've seen the walk behind floor grinders. They come in various sizes, 30-inch, which is a couple of our larger machines. We have a couple of those. One works off of propane. One works off of 220 volt system. So we have a couple of those down to the 20-inch size walk behind grinders. We also have a shot blaster. So depending on what you need to achieve on the concrete slab itself. But for a vast majority, probably 85% of the projects we do use the diamond grinders, the walk behind floor grinders.
Okay, very good. And let's go ahead and we'll talk about what I want to talk about next is related to specifications. We'll talk about material selection and other elements of project as well. Related to specifications, you know, traditionally what you're finding are three types of specifications. The first being a proprietary, which is written specific to the system that's being installed, pretty consistent that way. A prescriptive specification is one that spells out exactly how the flooring system has to be installed. And then performance, this is where the physical properties meet the final project expectations. And Paul, typically when you're working with specifications from an owner, typically what do they tend to be? Any of these three?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, typically what you're finding is a lot will specify a particular product. So you're
Mm-hmm.
looking more, it's geared more towards, okay,
Like
we're going to use XYZ manufacturer, primer coat, base coat, top coat. So they really lay out,
a
at least from what
proprietary, yeah.
yeah, so it's a proprietary type thing. And then it's kind of on the applicator to come up with the amount of material needed, coverage rates, and everything like that. But they're normally pretty general in terms of, okay, this is what we want to use. Again, primer coat, base coat, top coat type thing.
Very good. And then related to material selection, this is where you really want to have a full understanding of the product data sheets and other product requirements, because that's going to be very critical to the project itself. And then the other thing is understanding mechanical factors. And what I mean by that is going to be, is this a non-traffic area? Is it a traffic area? What type of traffic is it? Is it foot? Is it tires? Is it, loaders or heavy equipment? Are there chemicals involved? And then abrasion potential. What's the abrasion potential related to the area that's the floor systems being installed? And then compositional factors, which would be, the spill potentials, or, maybe it's a storage area where, it also performs a kind of in a way a form of containment in that. Or maybe even a commodity temperature might be in there. Is it going to be in an area that will be of a higher heat in that over top of that slab, or could it be more closer to a cryogenic as well? So there's so many considerations that need to go into really the specification and then the overall understanding of the project to be able to really address it properly. There are, we talked about some of the you talked about grinding and things like for surface preparation. There are wet and dry methods that are utilized as well, because if we're looking at something that might be in secondary containment, maybe you're doing something a little different in exterior for tanks and things like that. You know what, Paul? We really kind of covered a lot related to floor systems. Is there anything that we did not cover that you would want to leave with everybody?
I think it's pretty thorough. We went through the pre-project, through the coding system itself, preparation, all those things. So I think we did a pretty thorough cover of this of the entire process here. I think one of the things too is, in addition to looking at the concrete slab, which obviously is important, take a look at some outside factors as far as when you're looking at your equipment. Do you have access to the proper electric? If not, do you need to provide a generator? Are you able to use propane in that environment for your
Mm-hmm.
equipment? What are some other factors there that are important to how that whole process is going to proceed as far as the prep goes? Because you want to make sure there's a difference if you're on the fifth floor of a building versus ground level, accessibility, and those other factors.
Very good. And Paul, if anyone listening has any questions or any comments, please don't forget to raise your hand. I can bring you up on the stage. But Paul, how can people kind of follow you, get in contact with you?
Our website is titanfloor.net, TITAN floor.net. You can access our social media from the website. You can get in contact directly with me, Paul at titanfloor.net. And if you have any questions, anybody has any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Great, Paul. Really appreciate it. And everyone, next on Monday, coming up this Monday, I will have the CEO from Apelix. We're going to be talking about robotics utilized in the industrial painting. So look forward to that Monday night, well, Monday evening for me and Paul. I'm sorry, Coding Talk live chat. And I think it's going to be a pretty good conversation we're going to have. I still need to find a topic for next Wednesday for the live chat. So I'll just stay tuned for that. But if everyone could also follow me on LinkedIn, and also if you go to YouTube, if you go and put in @CodingsTalk, it's all one word, @CodingsTalk. Please check out the YouTube channel, the content, the materials, and hopefully I can earn your subscription. Really appreciate that. Other than that, everyone have a good rest of your evening, your day, your morning, no matter where you're coming from. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks, everybody.